What's up, everybody? Welcome to the High Level Husband Podcast. I'm Tommy McCallister, once again joined by Dianne today, and we got a fun one that's probably going to be a hot topic episode for everybody because we're going to talk about female orgasms and sex and all of that, and just really dive into the topic on that because we have a testimony about that, and then we talked to a couple yesterday on a call, and intimacy, orgasm, all of that was a big issue. And there's so much to dive in around that. And so we just laid on our heart as we were creating a piece of content on it. It was like, let's just do a whole podcast on it. And so, babe, let's dive into it.
Yeah.
So, so guys, one of the things is that there's multiple aspects of it, right? Like, obviously, there's so much to marriage is more than sex, but it is a huge part because it's bonding and it's of God and all of that. But one of the things is the orgasm. And primarily, this one's going to be about the female version of it. And there's the stats. I believe it's something like 75% of women cannot orgasm through like penetration or intercourse.
Vaginally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And need it to be like through like clitoris stimulation or whatever that may be is how that they do it. Now, so there's so much into that. And then there's so much into the man side of things as well, because I don't care who you are. There is confidence. There's so many mind tricks that play with of that, because just as the devil works in regular life, he works in the bedroom as well and tries to ruin it for so many aspects. So let's get him and ask some questions. I'm going to explain some things, but I think we should just explain like our situation, our testimony before we get into like all the other aspects of it, babe. So make a long story short, guys, you guys know we've been together for 25 years, married for 18. So we've been having sex for 25 years. We didn't do it the right way, and wait till marriage and all of that.
Yeah.
And we would change things if we wouldn't go back now. That's another topic. But with that being said, it was never an issue. Like, I know just because I was shy and I felt like the need to be significance and all that, I always wanted to make sure that, like, because you're obviously not the only person I've ever slept with, that they always got the orgasm.
Right.
That was more important than honestly me getting my orgasm of it. And so, as we're married, that was never an issue. We get married, it's never an issue. We always have been at the spot where we always joke with like 100% finish rate and whatnot. But then we start having kids, and we've always had an abundant sex life and been able to keep that going. And it's been through its different stages, as everybody who listens to this podcast knows. But after our second child, so we only have 2 kids, but after our second child, you were no longer able to orgasm because of intercourse and penetration. So why don't you dive into that a little bit on that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what happened. Obviously, I never saw a doctor for it or anything like that. I just knew in time. I thought maybe that's just what happened when you have kids, that things change or something, you just never know. I mean, that was a long time ago. But over time, obviously, we were able to again, but it took some time to figure that out. And it was us communicating with each other and talking with each other about figuring that out and how to make that work and what we do instead, to that way we keep still having our regular rhythm of sex, together, but had to figure that out.
Yeah. So, to kind of just dive a little bit deeper, right? So obviously, you have a kid, so you can't have sex for, what is this, like 45 days, somewhere around
6 weeks. Yeah.
Something like that. Right. And so we start having sex again. And of course, just things are different because your body's, you're breastfeeding, your body had a baby, like all these things. And so we're just like, okay, well, that's, new. And so because, and I don't really want to call it insecurities, call it what you want to call it. I always want to make sure, I think it's part love. Like, I just want to make sure that you're pleased, but I think it's also, I just want to make sure that she sees me as like being able to please her, know?
Right.
So like, I would say it's an insecurity or confidence thing. So I'd always make sure you get it. So if I couldn't do it that way, I'd make sure you got it in another form of method.
Absolutely.
And so, but then we started noticing, okay, this isn't happening at all, which was never an issue.
Right.
And, we talked about it. Our relationship wasn't then what it is now. So I don't think we went as deep. No. I think that, you were just like, well, I just really can't now. I think it's just ever since I've, had our second child, that's just what it's been. And I don't think I really shared my insecurities around it of like, well, why can't I
Mhm.
do this?
Right.
I could before. What's
Right.
changed?
And, I think a lot of men don't realize it either necessarily too, that it wasn't on you. It wasn't anything that you were doing or doing different or anything like that. It was just me with my body.
Right. And I think that, well, it's now, I mean, so I guess that was 14 years ago. Um, Social media wasn't as popular as now, and like information didn't seem to be as abundant. I don't think people looked at it, and honestly, it just didn't even
Mhm.
cross my mind to be like, I just felt like women have sex, women orgasm through, that's the way, for the most part, that's like the primary method. I think I was just so immature and just and not just like immature like as an individual, I meaning more of like immature, like I just didn't know. um wasn't updated on all of the stuff that now that it is, it's like 75-80% of women can't. Now some of that might be physical, that they just can't physically do it, and some of that might be mentally, and we're going to touch on the mental aspects of that here in just
Mhm.
a little bit. But so like Dianne said, we had to work through this and talk about it, and so
Mhm.
I always made sure, and then I think you just knew too, that like I was going to take care of you in some other way,
Right.
right? Which, as I was sharing it in a reel that we're going to put out, it was a gift and a curse, because the curse is on, like, I think you just can't, you at that time could not do it, orgasm that way, so that's a bit of a curse. The gift and the curse was that it impacts me,
Right.
which then impacts other areas of our life a little bit. It all trickles into each other. But I think the gift was then we had to explore and figure things out to be able to, not that we weren't doing those other ways as well already, but
Right.
I think we had to like start exploring more. And what eventually happened, guys, was I can't remember how many years, but it was years,
Yeah.
afterwards, that we figured out there were certain positions that you could do it
Mhm.
in.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of couples go wrong. It's like they realize maybe in one position or something, or maybe one or two or something, that it doesn't work. Well, how many are there out there? Probably billions, you know? So
Yeah,
you have to keep trying and
experimenting.
experimenting and just trying to figure out and see what actually does work. Don't just give up on the first one or two things that you try and it doesn't work. You have to keep trying because bodies are a fascinating thing, but they're also difficult things. So you have to figure it out.
For real, I remember like the first time like you got close, and it was in a position that we had never done before, and I don't even, I just think it was the heat of the moment and we were letting it rip, and we got into a position that you'd never been in before, and it got close, and you were like, whoa, I almost, and I
Yeah.
was like, really? Like I was excited.
Me too.
But and then we slowly just figured out, and then eventually
Mhm.
now we've figured out the positions that it works for you, and that's great, but we also figured out other methods of modalities that work too,
Right.
that make it happen. So, and it's not through like, okay, well, you need a vibrator to do it intercourse wise. No, that's not it. It's through some type of, and this is so weird when I was talking about this, but like it's clitoral stimulation of some type of, there's
Right.
multiple ways to do that. And so we figured those things out, which made it nice to be able to then grow and force. And I feel like that's the way God works in life in so many other areas, is we plateau typically in marriage and fitness and in faith and all these other things, where he's like, well, now I need you to do this a little bit differently. Now I'm not going to allow you to feel me in this position. Maybe normally you feel me in worship and prayer, but now I'm going to pull back, so you have to go search for me out in loving on others. Or
Mhm.
maybe I'm going to do that, so where you're going to, now I'm going to pull back in these other areas, and now you're going to search me for in nature, and you're going to have to go search me out there in those areas. And that's great because it mixes this up, but then he can bring those other ones back as well. And then now we have all those tools. He doesn't want to always just bless us in one area and
Right.
neglect all those other things, because now we're good in that one area. It forces us to grow in how we're feeling him, getting to know him. It's the same thing within intimacy and our spouse. We can go, this is a negative or this is a positive. And the positive for us was it forced us to grow. Now,
Mhm.
the negative is, we as individuals have to talk about this, because if you don't, then you're going to think, okay, she just can't get off by me anymore. It's something that I'm doing. And then we're going to build insecurities. And then they're going to think maybe it's them or whatever, or we don't even know what each person thing is. You have to really communicate on it so you can grow and be open. And we've talked on this so many times. Just because you liked one position 4 years ago doesn't mean it's still going to work now. Just because you didn't like something 4 years ago does not mean that you will like it now.
Yeah.
We change spiritually, mentally, physically, all these different things in those times. And then you can try it again. If you still don't like it, that's cool. You tried. Okay, we've done that with plenty of things. It's been
Right.
like, nah, not really feeling that. Cool, no worries.
Try it again another 5 years, you know?
But we're always stoked when you actually try. That was for me, was when you would try. There was so many
Yeah.
years where you were just like, no, I'm not trying that.
Yeah.
Don't like it.
Yeah.
And it would frustrate me because I was like, well, try it.
Yeah, because you never know. And then look what happened.
That goes for all areas of life.
Yeah.
You hated
absolutely.
working out.
Yeah.
You would cry when you would go to the gym.
Yes.
Then you became a worldwide fitness and nutrition coach. How does that happen? Because you kept trying.
Yeah.
Eventually it stuck.
Yeah.
And whatnot. And so I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much. But one thing I wanted to touch on is the mental block for women. Because sometimes it's not that they had babies. Sometimes it's not that they physically just can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's that they're in their mind about this. And
Absolutely, 100%.
And I'm just going to touch on one thing before I toss you the mic. And I told this to the couple yesterday, and this is just me being real with you guys on this call, is that, I don't know, I'd say 99% of the time, like the dudes, when we go to the bathroom, we're in the urinal, right? It's weird. You have some dude standing next to you. I can pee, but there was a long time when I was younger where I like had to have nobody in the stalls next to me or anything like that. And I'll say it randomly, maybe just depending on how much caffeine I've had or something like that, that it happens now, but majority of the time it's not an issue. But it does happen from time to time, and it's all in the head.
Right.
And it's the same thing with women. It's a lot of times in your head, if you can't relax. So maybe that's, you guys have been arguing or things like that, and you're not emotionally connected. You haven't two become one. You're not just super connected and know each other and fully trust, that you won't let that come out. Or maybe it's that just something's going on. You're overwhelmed with the kids or job, anything. It can happen, which is why it's so important to have our priority list and be so close to God to really soften our heart, to be able to open up those other areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I could go deep on that one, but I obviously would talk your ear off. So unless you have this one, babe.
I think a lot. I think half the time it probably is, you know, just at least half the time, just something in women's heads, you know, because I know for me that was it for a long time. You know, you start thinking of all these different things that you need to do, or, you know, like your list of chores, or like, did I take this out of the freezer? Or, you know, I mean, you just start going down the list of all the things, and it's not like you're purposely thinking of these things. They just pop into your mind, you know? But I think a lot of times it's, you feel, if you're not 100% connected with your spouse, you know, or in a great spot, you feel like somebody's watching you, you know, just like you were saying in the stall, you know, trying to pee in the urinal, you know, the eyes are on you. And I think that's why a lot of women like to be in the dark, not necessarily half it maybe because they're self-conscious about their bodies, but I think the other half might be too, because they feel like then nobody's watching them, you know. It's like you were saying in peeing in the stall, you know, like somebody standing right next to you, you know, like hovering over you almost, you know. It's kind of the same thing. I think that you feel like eyes are on you, you know, and so you can't concentrate because you feel like somebody's staring at you, you know. And I think some of it's just things like that too.
Yeah. No, you're so right on that. And I still notice, I think that there's that way in our intimacy a little bit. Not that there's a block because we're super connected,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that there's times like, if I'm like, we're looking in each other's eyes or things like that, it's great. I know you enjoy that, but I know when it comes close, when I'm like, okay, I know she should probably be orgasming sometime soon. It's been X amount of time. Like we've had sex so
We
many
know.
times that like, if I like go to like start kissing on like your boobs or something like that, and so
Right.
now I'm not like eye to eye with you
Right.
or whatever,
Yeah.
or then I know that soon after it's gonna happen.
Right.
Or like sometimes, but this is where it's gonna get you too at TMI, guys. Whatever, we're real raw on this podcast.
Yeah.
You know what? And is if we're doing something like doggy style, where then you can't see, you can focus in on what you just, that and nothing
Right.
is, you know,
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
It happens super fast,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the same thing I was talking about things that we think about in our heads and stuff. You know, if we know that somebody's staring right at us or something, you're like, you start thinking of things. You're like, oh, they're staring right at me. I don't know. I think that we just get in our head sometimes.
Yeah, totally. So guys, there's a lot that plays into that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, guys, you know how it is. Majority of us can be like, I could have sex right now. Like maybe I'm into it, maybe I'm not right now. But if she's like, hey, you want to go? Like, yeah, sure. Women, I mean, you're always game. Like if I said, hey, babe, let's turn this off and go sex right now, you're gonna be like, okay,
Right.
you know.
Right. It does take. I mean, men can like in the blink of an eye, be ready, but it does take women a lot longer,
to get to that
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah.
And so you might need longer foreplay. You might need all this other stuff. And in that's why foreplay starts earlier in the day and sometimes
Yeah.
days before.
Yeah.
So then by the time there's tension built, by the time you get there, you're ready for it rather than like going from hot to cold. Like let that tension build, guys, throughout the day of whether that's texting with each other, flirting with each other, joking, keeping it playful and all of that. Like we put out a reel earlier this week that how to know if your husband's into you. And it was like, and we've used jokes of like, oh, my sister got a new position. And then I'd be like, oh, I'll put you in a new position. And it's like just sexual jokes that we do.
Yeah.
Childish, yes, a little bit, but playful, fun, yes.
Absolutely.
But it's also, I'm just saying those are small things. I'm not saying that's what's going to get you in the mood, but it is sometimes little small things.
Yeah.
Or it's just me coming up and holding you behind you or
walking by and running, grazing your hands across my butt, just
yeah.
things like that, which, we do to each other all the time. And I think that those movements and those little things like that are so important.
And it just builds up. So then it
Yeah.
gets there easier, right? Rather than like a lot of, especially, when kids are younger, right? Moms are so overwhelmed with like protection mode and things like that. Us guys are like, oh, that'll be all right, but moms are a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so there's more going on in your head. Women are more emotional, men are more logical. So we're not as in our head and thinking as much on those things. But we gotta get off here in just a few minutes. We gotta cut this one a little bit short today. But I wanted to touch on one thing that I think a lot of men would probably want their wives to know, or I'll just want to give the men that some things that you're not alone in this one. That's why I like to be vulnerable and real. I'm as alpha of a male as they come, but I'm also as playful, as fun, as a dork, as have my own things as well that I either fail at or have an insecurity at that I'm always working on and trying to get better at. But men, when it comes to sex, right? That's why I always say I have 100% finish rate. It's a joke
Yeah.
we say,
Yeah.
but I make sure that you get yours every single time.
Yes, you do.
And the reason being, well, one, because I love you and I know you want to enjoy it. When you enjoy it, you want to come back for more. So it's a good game plan, guys.
Right.
And whatnot. And there's ways of doing that. Even if you're ready to do it, there's ways to take care of them other ways to make sure that they're there before. And I always make sure that you get yours before mine. Anyways, I'm not like bragging or anything. What I'm just saying is the reason why I do that is multiple. Like I said, because I love you, but two, probably because, like I said earlier, like an insecurity that I want to make sure that you're pleased. I want to make sure that you don't look like my husband can't take care of me, or I wonder if there's another man. And I know you don't think that, or nor do I think that. I think at a time, probably early on in our relationship or dating was like, and this is the problem when you've had sex with other people. Not that your mind can't play those things. Is like, oh, they've had sex? She's had sex with other people. Like, oh, was that person better than me? Did he make her orgasm more? Did he do this? And so the devil plays with those tricks with us. Then, so we're trying to do those. And so God works all things together for good is because of those things. I make sure you get yours, which is great. But then I think over the years, men have having insecurities, which is why when you reject your husband and don't give him sex, now, yes, you have to earn it in specific ways. It hurts because you're thinking you're not attracted to me. You're not into me.
Right.
Then that plays games in our heads. The devil is at warfare. He can't physically harm you. Well, he's going to spin that in your head.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All the time
of
that. And so we got to be very, very careful that men struggle with a lot of insecurities. I work with professional athletes, some of the baddest dudes in the world, some of the richest dudes in the world, and coach them. And majority of them struggle with self-worth.
Yeah.
They're super confident in the workplace, extremely insecure at home, extremely insecure at home. And this is one of those aspects. And so I don't care if you're whoever. So sometimes we look at a professional athlete and they're like, oh man, they got the hottest chick. They've got a jet. They've got all this stuff. Like, man, like you're not alone. And I want the women to understand that rejection plays a huge part in your husband's confidence. If you want him to be more confident, play a part in that.
Right.
And you can't be dudes, you can't be a jerk and an a-hole and all these other things and then expect her just to do that. Now do your part in it well.
Right.
As well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we got to get going here, babe, but I guess what would be your encouragement to men who maybe struggle with, I want to make sure my wife is always pleased. I feel like a woman always wants to make sure she's always being like the greatest of all, I'm the greatest of all time, and every single time my performance is wonderful or whatever, what would your thing to say to men like that? Because I feel like that's not what women are thinking.
Right. I want men to know too that it's probably a good portion of the time has nothing to do with them. It's about what something that we're going, we have going on or something like that. It's not even necessarily them, but sometimes it is. We do want them to be a leader and show us love, be connected with us and those things. But it's not necessarily when we reject, it's not because it's something that you necessarily did always either.
And not just the rejection part, but I think more of what I'm speaking on is more about like them needing to put on their A game performance every single time. Because you know how one of my things just in life is I always put a ton of pressure on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single coaching call, I have to hit a home run on.
Right.
Every single group coaching call, I have
Yeah.
to hit a home run on. And
Yeah.
you've seen me do this where I'm like,
Yeah.
I could have been better.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not just in coaching. I can do that. And it's good. It works out good because now we've built something because of my tenacity,
Mm-hmm.
but it also puts a lot of pressure on me.
Right.
And so I also it's not anymore in the bedroom. But it was for a long time. Like I had to make sure it was the greatest performance of all time, which then
Win for me.
I know, but I would say just give
Yeah.
men things like, hey, because I remember one time, as we really do got to go, but one time, a friend of yours, I'm not going to mention their name, but this was like, I think right before we were getting married,
Mm.
they were dating one of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I mean, I love it. Like we have really good sex, but dude, this dude's an over pleaser. Like, come on, man. Like sometimes like I got mine, get it going here. We don't need to make every single one a spectacle and thing here. Like,
Right.
and us, I know that guy struggled with confidence and insecurities. And so
Right.
he was trying to make sure he was the greatest.
Yeah.
And so I think that comes to a spot where it's like, hey, be good. Every single one doesn't need to be a 2-hour ordeal, and
Yeah.
it can be a quickie, it can be spontaneous, it can be lovemaking, it can be all these different things.
Yeah.
Just like in baseball, sometimes a bunt is just as good as a grand slam.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't always have to be, like you said, some 2 to 3 hour drawn out thing where it's just, grade A performance. You can have a grade A performance in 20 minutes, and those are fine too, because not always do we want to have this big production because we have so much going on our minds, as we were talking about earlier, anyways, and stuff like that, that we don't always want this like long drawn out thing. Sometimes we want just something that's shorter, like, let's just have some fun. Let's, enjoy each other and be
It's like
done, and that's fine too.
it's just like making dinner, right? Like sometimes you
Yeah.
can make a big dinner,
Extravagant dinner, and then sometimes like, let's slap some burritos together,
it's right. It's because time, right? So
Yeah.
if every single time it's this drawn out production because you think you need,
We're probably going to want it less then, because we know it's just always going to be this huge big thing,
and there's been times
which is great
over
too,
the years, and it happens pretty rarely, but that you'll say, I'll make a move and you'll be like, hey, let's sneak into the closet real quick because
Right.
your kids are up or whatever. And you're like, this will be just about you because it's going to take you a little bit longer to get there.
Right.
And we have a lot on our plate, or you have a
Right.
lot, and you're like, hey, let's just this be about you because
Right.
guys can typically get there a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And so then you're like, let's just make it about you. That's rare that you say that.
Yeah.
But it does happen sometimes,
Mhm.
I think I get a little disappointed because I like want it to be about you, because then it's not as like, for me, it's not as cool, where it's just like, you're almost just like, all right, well, you're a beanbag there. Let me just get this over with.
I feel like there's a lot more seldom now. I mean, I don't
It
feel like it's
is.
very often anymore since we've become closer and connected and figured things out with each other.
Yeah, I got bigger biceps now,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah,
makes it a bigger social media following. So you gotta do your parts, keep up. No, I'm just joking. So anyways, guys, I love y'all. I really, truly do. The podcast has really been growing. If you guys need some coaching, like our coaching program, I'm telling you, we have been having insane transformation. Just love what God's doing. The men that God's been bringing there the way we coach is so specific and different, and the different aspects that we give you in your life that most men don't have is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we get the transformations that we get. If that's what you need, click the resource that we'll have below, watch that, and there's a way to book a call. Secondly, guys, one thing I could just ask is if you could rate this a 5-star. It's easy, whatever platform you are, it's easy to do. Just rate it 5 stars. I can't tell you how much it actually means to us and grows the podcast. Like, this is one of our main focuses moving forward, that we want to just grow this really, really big. And, for multiple reasons, to get the impact out there, but that really helps every time it does. Somebody gives us a 5-star review, it gets pushed to more people. So you're part of the team and you're part of the mission, and it really fills our cup. So thank you so much for that. God bless y'all. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.